Hey everyone, this is Nikachu, and I'm here to reflect on Pro Tour Hour of Devastation. What went right? What went wrong? Did anything really go wrong? Did anything really go right? You know, everyone makes these sort of really results-oriented sort of review articles and stuff like that. I'm not going to be like that. I'm going to tell you how it was up front, what my expectation was, and so on. The tournament, I really have to say, it was a really fabulous experience. It was a very reserved, very professional level tournament. It was very cleanly run and organized. The players there are all fantastic and accomplished. Like, you know, when you go to a Grand Prix, you sit down and you say, hey, where are you from? And, you know, maybe what you do. And it's very casual like that. But when you go to the Pro Tour, the question everyone asked was, how did you get to the Pro Tour? How did you get your invitation? Some people would say, well, I won a limited Grand Prix. I won X and 2 in Copenhagen. I won an RPTQ. I made top 8 at GP that. It was, so everyone there is very accomplished, and it's very, very interesting in that regard. So the way I prepared for this tournament is I don't know dank all about drafting or limited. So early July, I signed up for Travis Wu's mastermind. Travis Wu, if you didn't know, was in the running for Draft Master. There's a lot of limited content out there, but what do they really actually know? I'm only going to trust the people who have the real results, and Travis had the results. So I joined his mastermind. He accepted me. And by the way, the coaching program is actually fantastic. I don't know how many people are really utilizing it to its full extent, but I mean, you post your drafts, and he within like minutes responds and gives a lot of feedback. And through trial and error, with posting many failed drafts over time, I became a better player. I learned a lot of general drafting theory that I was completely oblivious to. And that was like a real burden on me, is that I didn't know anything about limited, nothing whatsoever. I was starting from scratch. But and I didn't have a whole lot of time, and I had even less time than I thought I did because of standard, and we'll get into that later. But I felt like I was a million times better, much more prepared than I would have been if I were on my own, or if I were trying to consult other sort of limited advice scattered on the internet. Unfortunately, Travis himself, the limited theory was great, but Travis himself did not perform extremely well, and his opinions contradicted maybe what other pros were doing. There were a lot of ideas that he underrated, and it might have shown in his performance, and also probably showed up in mine as well. I went, unfortunately, 0-3 in the draft. My limited deck was sort of poor. It was like okay, but do you know what? Okay is not good enough on the Pro Tour. I had to have a good deck. The players, there are no ponies on the Pro Tour. If anything, like there are bums, but it's mostly sharks. There's no like real weak fish or anything there. Everyone, for the most part, played really clean Magic. The only mistakes they made were unfamiliar. Were only had to do with the unfamiliarity they had with my Spirits deck. But aside from that, everyone made really clean plays. So the point is, the competition's really tough, and I need a really good draft deck. I can't expect to outmuscle them, especially since I am still sort of a novice in drafting as well. It's a completely different ball game in that, you know, things like pump spells and life gain and death touch and flyers and reach and creatures with very large toughness. These are all patterns that are very new to me. I don't think it is particularly complicated, but it is for me it is incredibly new stuff. So how to play around pump spells properly, how to play around the removal that exists in the format, it is still quite difficult, seeing as I had no practice with it. If I could do things over again, I would have joined Travis's mastermind months ago, around when Amonkhet came out, especially since Amonkhet was one of the sets that came out, and there was a lot of overlap between what Amonkhet had to offer and what Hour of Devastation had to offer. Travis thought they were both very aggressive formats, and to a large extent, I agree with him. So yeah, drafting went terrible. I went 0-3. I had just a mediocre deck and got annihilated. There were other things as well that I learned when I was sitting there drafting. I spent most of my time preparing in intermediate leagues online, and that sort of screwed me because it's a different environment. If I took a bunch of Oketra's Avengers and Spellweaver Eternals, I can ignore Blur Blades all I want, because when I play in the league, I'm going to be playing against a bunch of random people, and I'm not going to necessarily play against all the other cards that were in my boosters. Not so in the Pro Tour. I was taking these Oketra's Avengers and passing tons and tons of Blur Blades. It just so happens that within the boosters, I was drafting an archetype that was going to get hated out by all the other remaining cards in the packs, and I felt very eerie about this during the draft, but I didn't feel like there was really all that much I could do. I'm not gonna like change my strategy or my understanding of the format like just all of a sudden at the Pro Tour. But in the end, those Blur Blades did me in. I played against two out of the 3 of my opponents within my pod were playing red, and they annihilated me with these cards. So in the future, I would just play like single elimination drafts or like drafts where I'm playing in the same pod as somebody, and I don't know, I can get a Swiss in or something. But it can't just be like just intermediate leagues. I don't think that is sufficient preparation for a Pro Tour. So that was limited. And now going into Standard, like I would have also liked to have played a little bit more limited, but Standard kept changing. It kept changing over and over and over again. It was a very defined format, and I was super happy with my deck before Blue-White Monument became a thing. But then Blue-White Monument became a thing, and it shook things up a little bit. And then all of a sudden, some Emerge decks started to show up. Tons of Emerge decks, different variations of Emerge started to pop up. And then getting very close to the Pro Tour, red deck wins became a really big thing. Really big. It had clear good results at in the SCG events, and eventually, day after day after day, it was 80% of what I was playing online in competitive leagues. I knew red deck wins was going to be the breakout deck of that tournament. And the problem with that is every other deck was trying to beat red deck wins as well, and they were doing it with a lot of removal, a lot of spot removal, and that is not something I wanted to play against. Like if you look at the Jerry Thompson winning Zombies deck in the prior Pro Tour, it had just 9 pieces of spot removal in the main deck. And then if you look at zombie decks right now, there's 11, plus 2 Liliana the Last Hope, plus more removal on the sideboard. The environment got incredibly hostile towards my poor Spirits deck. Oh, my poor Spirits deck. How I liked you so much. And it was very unfortunate. Even a week before the Pro Tour, I was very happy with Spirits. I really love that God Pharaoh's Gift deck became a thing, because I killed that deck. And I hope that's the breakout deck at the Pro Tour. I can beat that like right-handed. And but it didn't turn out like that. Just slowly, one day at a time, the games were getting rougher and rougher and rougher, and then I had to make massive adjustments to my deck. Like, I didn't originally want to play with any of these things. Tried Avacyn again. Avacyn's just trash in this thing. Gideon turned out okay, but probably Always Watching was still a better call. There was Control, though. There was Control, but I felt like when I put Metallic Mimic in, I was getting weaker against Control. Yeah, so I threw the Gideon in because it was a reliable Anthem. I really liked my sideboard. I thought the counterspells were really clean. 4 negate, 2 disallow, 2 essence scatter. I put cast outs because it's just an all-around good answer. It's an answer to Oketra's Monument as well, which is what I need. There's a lot of non-land permanents I need answers to, like Liliana the Last Hope and Oketra's Monument, or maybe even opposing cast outs. So yeah, I had to keep changing this list. Like on the very last week, I would have loved to have drafted more, but I couldn't because standard kept changing every single day. Is the room gonna be full of Blue White Monument? Is it gonna be full of God Pharaoh's Gift? Is it going to be full of Red Deck Wins? Is it going to be full of zombies? And coming to the tournament, I also played against quite a few zombies decks, and they were killing me. I couldn't beat zombies at all because they had like the most removal and they had the fastest clock. They could put a bunch of cheap creatures in play, and that was another thing. Like a few weeks beforehand, Dusk and Dawn was amazing. It was really, really strong. It blew a lot of players away. But because of the prominence of Blue White Monument, everyone was playing around Dusk and Dawn. Dusk just ended up being completely dead. It never killed anything. My zombies opponents kept their creatures at 2 power and nothing larger than that. The whole meta completely adapted to Dusk and Dawn because that was just one-sided board wipe is not where you want to be. Still, probably I would prefer like a few copies on the sideboard somewhere. I don't know, maybe something instead of the Scavenger Grounds. But it definitely didn't deserve a lot of copies, and it definitely didn't deserve to be in the main deck because it was just being air most of the time. And even though it could hit a decent chunk of cards out of Red Deck Wins, tapping out to kill a bunch of creatures that already had haste and dealt you damage isn't where you want to be. It's just not good enough. So yeah, what can I say? My deck, my labor of love. I put a lot of practice and experience in this, but it became it felt very reasonable. I mean, I felt very good about the build, but getting closer to the tournament, it was getting weaker and weaker, and there was really not much I could do about it unless I wanted to jump ship and play Red Deck Wins. I still think it was fine. I still liked the build. I happened to not play against any Red Deck Wins at all. What I ended up playing against, I played against Red Blue Eldrazi. I beat that. Then I played against God Pharaoh's Gift. I beat that very easily. And then I played against Black Green Constrictor. And I didn't actually get any momentum going. There was one game where I had just a slow start. And if I had a 1-drop or 2-drop, I probably would have won that game. But, you know, I didn't, and I ended up losing. And then I played against Blue White Monument, which I'm not sure if this is actually a bad matchup, because I can only lose the games when my opponent has Oketra's Monument, which most of the time they can't draw. They can't draw naturally. So maybe I'm favored, maybe it's even. I just know that when they do play Oketra's Monument, I'm dead. It's like Ensnaring Bridge in Modern for Merfolk. If they play this thing, they're just going to be way too mana efficient. They're going to play a few things this turn. They can really grind me out with Bygone Bishop, and there's just nothing I can do about it. But if they don't have it, then I can't. Their deck is just as clunky as mine, and I can tempo them out. But anyway, I played against an opponent who every single game had Oketra's Monument. I even cast out one of them, and he still had another Oketra's Monument. He had a second Oketra's Monument in that game, and I just went on to eventually lose. It was hilarious. We had really, really long games because I kept the guy made the 9/7 flyer from the land, and I just kept tapping it down with. I had a Rattle Chains and a Nebelgast Herald in play, and so I kept drawing spirits off the top of my deck, tapping things down to keep that thing at bay. But eventually, I was just ground out by Bygone Bishops and the little military guy that was creating humans every single turn. But if Oketra's Monument wasn't on the board, I probably would clean up those games very easily. And then in the last round, I played against zombies, and I just got my ass handed to me. My overall record was 2-6, and a lot of people would say that's not bad for a first Pro Tour. No. Yes, it is. It's terrible. It was a catastrophic result. I mean, not bad. It's like making day 2 and then losing all your games from there. Maybe that's not so bad. No, this was a pretty bad result. I could have done a hell of a lot better, and maybe I'll have better preparation for Limited. I will practice a lot earlier on. Maybe, maybe my deck won't get hated out so much at the last second. There's certainly a lot that can be adjusted. Like Unsummon, for example, was just an incredible card for most of my preparation, but closer and closer to the tournament, it just became really useless. It feels very bad against red deck wins. I mean, you just bounce something, but they're going to replay it, and you're at like card disadvantage, and you don't have the mana and tempo to block something and bounce your own spell to your hand and replay it later. You just lose on the board too easily. Much better, and like also the problem was against zombies. Their deck wasn't clunky at all. They had just a lot of really cheap stuff and cheap removal like Grasp of Darkness, Fatal Push, and that stupid Liliana card. The one black and X that creates X tokens and then gives a creature -X given how many zombies you have on the board. That thing is ridiculous. So for that reason, I can't even unsummon my own creatures and then replay them later. They're just way too fast, way too mana efficient. Probably going into this tournament, I probably should have had Essence Flux. That was because I was trying to figure out what's an answer to the sorcery speed removal and what's an answer to the instant speed removal, and Essence Flux would have done that. I know a lot of people were suggesting Essence Flux, but for the majority of my preparation, it just wasn't well positioned. It's not really what I wanted, it's not where I wanted it to be. And things like Unsummon was even still good against God Pharaoh's Gift decks because of that Lifelink Vigilance Flyer. They tap out for 5 mana, put that in play, and I just unsummon it for 1 mana, and it's a huge tempo blowout. Even though Essence Flux will still, do something, because I could Essence Flux, for example, Nebelgast Herald, and probably get in for damage anyway. What else could be different? I don't know how positioned the control decks were going to be. Maybe I put Gideon because I really wanted a little bit extra something against control. Maybe I should have just said to hell with it and just played Always Watching anyway, because I could attack and block creatures on the ground against zombies, against red deck wins. So these are things I'm gonna have to figure out going into the future. Because I'm gonna be playing Spirits in Grand Prix Minneapolis. Oh, you better believe it. This thing's gonna see a little bit more play. Scavenger Grounds was good, but not great. I mean, I had some really nice moments with this card where for example, if this thing's on the board against God Pharaoh's Gift, they're dead. It's just over. Scavenger Grounds, good luck. You gotta hard cast your stuff, and there's like no guarantee that any of that stuff's gonna resolve. And even against like some black-green decks, if they play, what is it called? Ishkana? Yeah, Ishkana, the spider. That thing has Delirium. Like, it only gets the extra spiders if Delirium is online. So you can like Scavenger Ground, exile the graveyard, and all they have is like 5 mana, 3/5 reach. Nice creature, buddy. Authority of the Consuls was great. I think I've only lost 1 game where I had this in play, and aside from that, I've won all the other ones. So it's a very good sideboard card. Really love it. I took out Aethersphere Harvester from my sideboard because I thought that it wasn't good to be tapping my creatures down. Like, you really want to have a lot of blockers against red deck wins, and I didn't think it was good to be tapping my creatures down to activate it just to get it abraded away. And I had some bad games like that, but I think I was being results oriented. I should just keep the Aethersphere Harvester anyway, because if they don't have a braid, at least I'm going to block something. I'm going to gain life, and they probably are going to have to use a burn spell to destroy it. So if they have a braid, whatever, they have a braid. If they don't have a braid, it's a huge upswing. It's a great card. So probably I have to like move it back into the deck. Cast Out was fine. It did its job. Can't say like it helped win me any games, but whatever. So yeah, that was my deck, and it ended up sucking up a lot of time getting closer and closer to the tournament because I had to figure out some solution to red deck wins. I had to look for some of these cards too. I had to like search around Kyoto for card stores that sold these fringe standard cards. Fortunately, I didn't have a problem with card availability. I was able to get every single card that I needed. I asked the dealers, like, on day one of the Pro Tour, did anyone buy any cards from you guys this morning? And they're like, yeah, which is hilarious because you have to have your deck submitted the day before. So there were a lot of people who committed to a 75 without actually having the physical cards in hand. That is a gamble. Wow, that was a gamble. That's hilarious. And what I'm going to look for, the silver lining behind all of this is I now have 10 pro points. That means I am a bronze pro. A lot of people have been calling me a pro for a very long time now. They have been all wrong, but today they're right. I am now officially a bronze pro. Just for showing up to the Pro Tour, you get 3 pro points, and that helps me go from I have 1 from GP Indianapolis of last year. I have 6 from Grand Prix Vancouver, 2nd place, and I have 3 for attending the Pro Tour. That makes 10, and 10 is all I need to become Bronze Pro. That means I can attend regional PTQs without having to enter the PPTQs, and I get 1 buy at Grand Prix, which I think is completely useless because I always had 1 buy at Grand Prix anyway, thanks to Planeswalker points. I feel like this is like I don't know, it's a empty award. I have a feeling anyone who's Bronze Pro is going to have a buy at all the GPs. It's not even hard to accumulate the Planeswalker points. Just play in like 3 GPs and boom, you've got the buy. So I don't know, Wizards, look into it. This award might be useless. But being able to attend the RPTQs is very important because those, at least in my area, they're pretty small. They're not that big, and it will make it very easy to get back onto the Pro Tour. All I have to do is make the semifinals. And that means I'm going to try very hard to get onto that Modern Pro Tour. We have to get back on the Modern Pro Tour. Modern has returned to the Pro Tour, and that means Merfolk is going to return to the Pro Tour. The real Merfolk. Because we all know it's going to show up in Ixalan anyway. So yeah, that was my Pro Tour experience. Overall, it was pretty good. Like, I mean, I had a good time. I wish I could have gone much deeper. I wish I could have done, maybe if I was in the winner's bracket, I could have played against Red Deck Wins and show them some authority. But unfortunately, that didn't happen. But I'm not going to have to worry about that because I'm a Modern Master and a Merfolk Master, and we're going to fix all that. We're going to be super well prepared for the Modern Pro Tour. I just have to get on it. So if anyone was curious how my preparation went and what I did for the Pro Tour, that was it. Yeah, that's all I have to say. So anyway, this has been Nikachu talking about Pro Tour Hour of Devastation.